Oh man, 1991. What a year. Think about the sound of that summer, the music that made you feel invincible, the rhythm that anchored a whole generation. You had High Fives, The Kissing Game, and the ever-smooth Summertime from The Fresh Prince. C&C Music Factory was making you sweat, and Shay had everyone singing along to I Love Your Smile. It was an era of infectious R&B and hip-hop, and we all believed the party would never end. But hidden within that euphoria, there is a story we rarely tell, a story of brilliance, a flash of undeniable talent, and an impossible silence. They were Damian Dame, the male and female duo who captured the heart of the R&B charts and became the very first act signed to the powerhouse known as LaFace Records. They had the sound, the look, and the stamp of approval from Babyface and L.A. Reid themselves. Everything was aligned. They were on top and they were set to define the next decade of music. Yet their peak was tragically brief. What happens when a soaring dream is cut short not by a bad album or creative differences, but by a sudden, unthinkable chain of events? Tonight, we look back at the incredible high of Damian Dame and the devastating, almost unbelievable tragedy that silenced them forever. To understand the sudden halt of Damian Dame, we must first look at the foundations, the separate paths that brought two distinct talents to one stage. Their journey began far from the glamorous lights of Atlanta, rooted in different corners of America. The female half of the duo, Damian Dame, was born on September 20th, 1958 in Houston, Texas. But her upbringing truly took shape on the West Coast, where she was raised in San Jose, California. Her path to music seemed predestined. Her father once shared that even as an infant, she was humming out sounds. As she grew, she gravitated toward the powerful, soulful voices of R&B legends like Denise Williams and Tina Marie. The church choir was her first true stage, where she honed the skills that would later make her voice instantly recognizable on the charts. By the time she reached 18, Dia began touring professionally with the band led by her older sister and brother-in-law. This foundational experience led to a solo deal with Geffen Records, culminating in her self-titled album release in 1983. The album featured singles like Hugged Me and Squeezed Me and a cover of Prince's Got a Broken Heart. One of these early singles, though minor, did manage to chart on the Billboard Hot Black Singles chart, reaching number 62 and staying for 6 weeks. The late 80s brought a critical turning point when Dia met Kenneth Babyface Edmonds and Antonio L.A. Reid, who were then part of the group The Deal. Babyface, stepping away to work on his own debut solo album, was captivated by Dia's voice. He enlisted her to provide background vocals for his 1986 debut album, Lovers, where she was featured on the song Faithful. She later contributed vocals to The Deal's last album, Eyes of a Stranger, which famously included the classic hit Two Occasions. This relationship with the future titans of R&B paid dividends, leading Dia to record background vocals for a slew of major artists, Babyface and L.A. Reid were working with, including Karen White, Superwoman, Pebbles, and Shalimar. Meanwhile, Damian was forging his own prodigious path hundreds of miles away. Born on September 13, 1966, in Marshall, Michigan, he was raised in nearby Battle Creek. Damian was a true child prodigy. He taught himself to play the piano, the drums, and the guitar, mastering multiple instruments by the young age of 9. Inspired by pop icons like Michael Jackson and Prince, he began playing in hometown clubs at just 16. By the 80s, Damian moved to Los Angeles, determined to pursue his music dreams. He joined the group Shy Boy as a keyboardist and also founded his own production company, Kazoo. The eventual convergence was almost accidental. Dia, seeking a new deal, was working on a solo demo. A friend played this demo for Damian. Once Damian heard it, he was blown away by her singing talent and wanted to work with her immediately. Damian initially intended only to produce, but Dia quickly recognized the depth in his voice and pushed him to sing. For 3 months, the two worked tirelessly in the studio, crafting a sound that blended hip-hop and R&B, a signature style they knew could catch fire. At this critical moment, Babyface and L.A. Reid were at the height of their influence, having just produced Bobby Brown's multi-million-selling Don't Be Cruel. Music executive Clive Davis, seeing their genius, wanted a joint venture. The result was LaFace Records. Babyface never forgot Damian Dame's talent. When they heard the demo from the newly formed duo, they loved the hip-hop and R&B combination. In a move that validated their talent and promised superstardom, Babyface and L.A. Reid signed Damian Dame as the very first act on LaFace Records. The stage was set for two separate dreams to explode into one brilliant reality. The Ascendance, the sound of LaFace. Being the first act signed to a record label founded by Babyface and L.A. Reid was a high-stakes, high-reward proposition. The industry was watching, waiting to see what the architects of the New Jack Swing sound would deliver next. And with Damian Dame, they did not disappoint. The duo delivered a sound that was fresh, a seamless combination of streetwise hip-hop rhythm and deep R&B emotion. The breakthrough moment arrived on April 15, 1991, with the release of their first single, Exclusivity. This track was an immediate sensation on the Black Singles chart, confirming the duo's appeal and the label's vision. It spent 2 triumphant weeks at #1 on the US R&B chart. While it only peaked at number 42 on the broader Billboard Hot 100, its dominance in the R&B world signaled a major new voice had arrived. The song resonated deeply, speaking to the complexities of modern love with a beat that demanded attention. The momentum continued when their self-titled debut album followed swiftly on May 14, 1991. Though it did not crack the Billboard 200, it climbed proudly to number 21 on the Billboard R&B chart, an impressive feat for a debut act. This success was built on the undeniable chemistry between Dea and Damian. Dea's powerful, soulful delivery was perfectly complemented by Damian's smooth, producer-honed baritone and his mastery of musical arrangement. Their unique blend quickly established them as a foundational piece of the emerging LaFace Records sound. The album produced other memorable singles, notably Got to Learn the Rhythm and Right Down to It. Right Down to It became another substantial hit, reaching number 2 on Billboard's Hot R&B Singles chart and showing remarkable staying power by remaining on the chart for 21 weeks. The song encapsulated their signature style, lyrics that were heartfelt and direct, backed by production that was ahead of its time. Years later, singer Kenny Lattimore would remake this very song, proving the timeless quality of the original Damian Dame composition. The duo's impact wasn't just measured in chart positions, it was measured in connections. Their debut album featured T-Boz and Left Eye of TLC on the track 60 Seconds to Conclusion. Even more telling is the story of Chili, who was a part-time dancer for Damian Dame during this period, and it was this connection that ultimately helped her find her place in TLC. This means that the debut act of LaFace Records was, in a quiet but essential way, nurturing the very superstars who would later define the label. Their growing influence even extended to Hollywood. In 1992, they contributed the song Reversal of a Dog to the soundtrack of the Eddie Murphy movie Boomerang, sharing space with burgeoning label mates Toni Braxton and TLC. The track stood as a testament to their versatility, placing them firmly within the elite R&B circles of the era. Damian Dame was more than just a successful group. They were pioneers. They laid the groundwork for the R&B dynasty that LaFace was becoming, validating the vision of Babyface and L.A. Reid, and proving that the new generation of R&B duo artists had arrived. They defined a precious moment in music history, a pure, exciting high that promised a decade of the interruption. The silence after the siren. The rapid ascent of Damian Dame proved the genius of the new LaFace Records empire, but every empire casts a shadow, and this duo found themselves standing right in it. The dream of superstardom, which began so brilliantly, soon encountered the brutal realities of the music business. As Babyface and L.A. Reid achieved exponential success, their focus naturally shifted to the acts that were becoming global phenomena: TLC, Toni Braxton, Outkast, and Usher. These artists became the new brighter stars in the LaFace galaxy. For Damian Dame, the momentum slowed, and frustration began to build. It is rumored that Damian and Dea grew upset with the business dealings at LaFace Records. They were said to be heavily involved in the songwriting and production for the label's artists, a fact that, according to rumors, was not always fully acknowledged by Babyface and L.A. Reid. This sense of being underappreciated and unfairly compensated mirrored the business strife faced by their contemporaries. Both TLC and Toni Braxton would later face financial turmoil and even file for bankruptcy, despite selling millions of records. The story of Damian Dame tragedy is sadly a familiar refrain in the black music industry. Talented artists generating immense wealth while struggling for fair control and royalties. Just as the duo prepared to record their second album, the ultimate unimaginable crisis struck. The music stopped not because of a bad contract, but because of a devastating finality. On June 27, 1994, Dea Dame was killed in a car accident in Atlanta, Georgia. The details surrounding her death remain hazy and tragic. Rumors suggest she had been seen leaving the House of Pebbles, the artist and early LaFace collaborator, possibly while intoxicated. It was even speculated that she may have been on a moped, though that detail is unconfirmed. What is known is that the accident was very, very bad and horrific. The sudden, violent death of Dea Dame at the age of 35 was an immediate, brutal shock to the R&B community and an end to the possibility of the R&B duo continuing. For Damian, the loss was crushing, yet he channeled his grief back into the music that had defined their lives. He left LaFace Records and worked on a solo project, dedicating it to Dea Dame. In 1996, the album titled Damian was released on Ship Records and H&H Productions. The ultimate unbearable postscript to the Damian Dame tragedy arrived exactly 2 years later. On June 27, 1996, the same date that Dea had died, Damian passed away. He was only 29 years old. The official cause of death was colon cancer. Compounding the heartache, he died only days after his debut solo album was released. However, the shadow of rumor followed him too, with reports circulating that he died from AIDS. The double tragedy of Damian Dame is a moment suspended in time. Two beautiful talents, separated by 2 years, both extinguished on the very same calendar date. A deep and shocking silence fell over the promising start of LaFace Records. The American perspective, the untold story. The music industry moves fast. The American public, captivated by the subsequent success of TLC, Toni Braxton, and Usher, quickly forgot the first act to carry the LaFace Records banner. The Damian Dame tragedy, a story of 2 lives extinguished on the same date, 2 years apart, became a footnote rather than a chapter. This swift erasure from the collective memory raises a painful question about how we, as a culture, treat the early pioneers. L.A. Reid and Clive Davis, in their respective memoirs, reportedly offered very little detail about Damian and Dea, acknowledging them mainly as the first group signed to LaFace Records. This silence, or rather the lack of depth, speaks volumes about how easily talent is dismissed once the lights dim. The story of this exceptional R&B duo was tragically cut short, not allowing them the time to cement their legend in the same way as their label mates. Yet you cannot truly erase talent. For those who lived through the early 90s R&B boom, the sounds of Damian Dame remain indelible. Their hits, particularly the enduring groove of Right Down to It, continue to surface. When Kenny Lattimore chose to remake the song in 2001, it was a quiet, necessary acknowledgement of the original's power, a nod from one generation of R&B to its tragically brief predecessor. The story of the Damian Dame tragedy stands as a somber reminder of the high cost of the industry's fast pace. It is a story of unfulfilled potential, lost youth, and a painful insight into the pressure cooker environment of LaFace Records. It reminds us that behind every platinum album and every megastar, there were pioneers whose foundation work was swept aside too soon. Their names may not dominate the headlines, but their musical influence, carried forward by those they inspired and the classics they left behind, remains a subtle, undeniable part of the R&B fabric. The silence and the legacy. The story of Damian Dame is one of the most heartbreaking counterpoints to the joy and exuberance of 90s R&B. Dame, the powerful voice, passed away at 35. Damian, the musical prodigy, followed her 2 years later at the age of 29. Their shared final date, June 27th, is a chilling coincidence, a kind of cosmic double tragedy that still defies belief. They were a foundational act, an influential R&B duo that helped launch the most important R&B label of the decade. Their talent was raw, real, and undeniable. Yet their legacy is not just in the #1 records they achieved or the future stars they connected with. Their true legacy is a somber truth about the price of ambition and the fickle nature of fame. It highlights the often unseen struggles within the dazzling machine of LaFace Records. The Damian Dame tragedy serves as a powerful cautionary tale for every young artist who chases the dream. Their lives remind us that life is fragile, that success can be fleeting, and that the best songs often come from the deepest soul. We read in their story the universal truth. Sometimes the greatest voices are silenced too soon. Damian and Dea are gone, but their sound, the intoxicating mix of hip-hop and R&B, endures. Whenever we hear those classic 90s rhythms, they are there, a beautiful, unforgettable sound from a dream that ended abruptly. If this story resonates with you, if the music of Damian Dame defined a moment in your life, we urge you to share it. Maybe you worked with them, or perhaps you just remember that one perfect night on the dance floor when exclusivity was the soundtrack. Write their names down below. We are committed to telling the full, respectful story of every legend, especially those of the Damian Dame tragedy who were overlooked or forgotten. If you want to keep these stories alive, if you believe in honoring the pioneers who built the foundation of our music culture, hit the subscribe button. We read every comment. Share your memory of Dame and Damian. Rest in peace, Damian Dame.